Good afternoon and welcome to Sylvan Healing Sanctuary. And I have great pleasure in welcoming Feroze Dada to today's discussion. We had the great honor of having Feroze join us today to discuss his latest book, which is called Disciple, which is only recently published by Bloomsbury. And well, I'm not going to preempt any of my thoughts around this today, but a series of discussion with you, Feroze, and really thanking you and welcoming you to today and your time.
Thank you, Craig, for inviting me to our Sylvan Healing platform, and I'm here really to answer your questions, my friend.
Okay. Well, I think I'm going to start with a really easy question to kick off, if that's okay. Why did you decide to write this book?
Whenever people say it's an easy question, then I think one needs to consider the answer very carefully. I was always taught by my teacher in this book, I call him Ustad, saying that if you are given knowledge, if you are gifted with knowledge, you cannot be selfish with it. And this gift, this grace needs to be shared with people. And only in that way can you stop being selfish and become selfless. So my prime motivation is to have the gratitude and the gift of having been given this knowledge, and my desire to share it with my friends, with people, and others who wish to take up the spiritual path.
Okay, thank you. Well, it's a beautiful way to be able to share your experience, and I've recognized it in the book, and that is exactly what you have done. What was the process like for you to capture your experience of writing this book, and how did you balance your experience in writing to the subject?
Most of us are given an opportunity, and with that opportunity comes a time, a place, and accommodation. For me, that was the pandemic. I suddenly found myself in seclusion as soon as I came back from Italy in March of 2020, it would have been, straight into quarantine. And with that seclusion came the knowledge and came the desire to, not knowing, of course, how long this seclusion would last, how long this lockdown would last, but that was the opportunity, that was the time, the space given for me to be able to do this. And paradoxically, almost 2 years later, the book finishes. So I would really, when I look back, I would say this was a time, place, and opportunity provided to me for this particular task.
And to the second part of the question is, how did you balance your experience to writing the book about this subject? I understand that you speak about this as being sharing of your experience, but it's a very sensitive subject.
Yes, I think the first crossroad really that I wanted to cross and make sure that I didn't make the mistake of sounding as though I'm preaching. That is really important. Hoping that this would not come from a position of pride, but a position of humility. Balancing those particular aspects was the most difficult thing, because saying something and then reflecting upon it as though it might sound arrogant that I am talking from a position of strength or position of knowledge. But the truth is, all I did actually in a way to overcome this problem is to say, this is what I have learned. I try not to say, this is what I'm teaching you. This is the gifts and my teachers have taught me, my great teachers, Ustad, the great Jane Fountain, of course, my monk in Myanmar. So I tried to balance that particular part away to say, I am a disciple, I am not a master. I'm not a teacher, I'm a disciple.
Well, that leads me perfectly to my next question. So you've titled the book, A Disciple. What are you a disciple of? And are we all disciples?
I think anybody who wishes to learn, particularly knowledge from people who have already walked the path, who are ahead of us, who have something to share with us, and we accept that gift of their teaching us, then we are disciples. This is not meant to be a religious title, although I'm afraid it may be taken to be sometimes, but it's not meant to be. It's just a student.
So what have you become a student of as a result of this?
A student of the seeker of knowledge, a seeker of the spiritual path, a path that actually has no ending. The knowledge is infinite, but it is a path, and I'm a seeker of this path.
Do you feel that writing the book has enabled you to reflect on that path as you have reviewed the steps that you've taken?
Actually, less the writing of the book, more of the path itself, because it was a journey of getting the knowledge to write the book, which is a powerful part. For example, when I came to the sanctuary, my knowledge began to increase as you, Craig, Cheryl, Jeff, and all the others opened the doors. And that's when the knowledge came flooding in. Actually, the writing of the book was not the flooding of knowledge. It was the process of getting to that place to get the knowledge. And I think that was the real journey, if you see what I mean.
And how does one become a disciple? That's an interesting question, I know, and it's a challenging one.
Well, it's a very good question. And if you don't mind, I'll tell you a little story. And maybe I was in my teens or something like that, very early days. And I read about how Rumi, the great Rumi, Persian philosopher, meets his teacher, Shams of Tabriz. That encounter is a spiritual encounter. Let me tell you why. Because there's a very common saying or well-known adage which says, when the student is ready, the master appears. Well, what does that mean? To me, when I read this in my teens, I thought, wow, this is a fairy tale. It cannot happen. It's like a myth. But the truth of the matter is, no, it's not. This is the way of a student when he is ready on the spiritual path. The master recognizes it. How does the master recognize this? You may ask, Craig. The master picks up the vibrations of the student at a spiritual or at a soul level. He recognizes individual is seeking, not at a physical level, not because somebody writes you an email saying, I want to be your student. He sees it, he feels it. Yes, and it's another Rumi saying that when that who you are seeking is also seeking you, and that's what happens. Then that way, on a vibrational level, the master appears. The universe listens to the vibrations, and the master picks up the vibration, the student gives it out, and that's what happens. I thought it was a myth, but actually it isn't. This is exactly how it happens.
reminds me of a story on a similar level of a music teacher, a voice coach, who was introduced to a man who was seeking lessons, but he was embarrassed because he was a strong man, beard, very male, but he had a soprano voice. And when he sung, the teacher said, "I have been waiting for you all my life." So I do understand that. And it's a way of acknowledging.
Very good analogy. Yes, and so it's not a myth, and I think your own experience might be that, Craig.
Sure, of course. Minor questions, Feroze. Moving on to my next question. How did you integrate your understanding and to explain to people who are interested in the subject but are unsure about spirit, spirituality, and religion? How did you manage this process in the book?
This is a very delicate balance, isn't it? That on the one hand, you want to talk about spirituality, yet you want to keep it at a language and a level which is understood and accepted by more people than if you did a really strong spiritual book. It's not easy. I think the only point is to relate it as though it's a story, and allow and say the story, the true story, in a sincere way. So people don't have to accept everything that is in the story, but if it's a story, it's sincere, and it's a sharing of that story, of a journey, a true journey, then people are much more prepared to listen. They can connect in certain parts. Certain parts I found particularly on the question of reincarnation was one which people found very difficult to comprehend. But in a way, of course, that is a subject in itself, of course. So yes, I would say that it may not be, the book may not be accepted in every aspect, but it doesn't matter. It's a journey. And as long as they are prepared to say this, that we are also prepared to seek our own journey. And I make that very clear that my experiences are not those experiences you will have. You will have your own experiences commensurate with your own needs, your desires, and your own path of incarnation. So in a sense, not easy, but I think so far as I get a feedback, I think it's been good. And people have been at least able to accept it. It's a sincere relation, relating a sincere story of experiences.
So the image that I have of you is this three-legged stool of religion, spirit, and spirituality. And of course, if you don't have all three in your mind, the stool will just fall over when you sit on it. So acknowledging and accepting that they all have a value, they may not be everyone's value, but would you say that that is something that you've tried to balance?
Well, certainly, I've certainly tried to not make it a religious book. It's certainly not a religious book, but it draws upon traditions, and our greatest traditions, in a sense, and stories and myths and parables come from religious activity, from the Sufi stories of Islam. They're related to Islam, but Sufism is not an Islamic path. It's a path open to all. Even the Orthodox Christianity, in the sense of St. Francis of Assisi, is not a religious story. It's a story of a monk who loves his God beyond anything else. It's a story of unconditional love. It's not a story of religion. None of the stories there are of religion. They're stories of love, of of relationships, of the path. They're not they're not religion. There's no religious teaching in there.
No.
So,
No,
I mean,
but there is an acceptance and an acknowledgement of religious traditions.
Absolutely, because I think they are a rich part of our lives.
Yeah.
As long as we don't make them ritualistic, we don't follow things blindly, and we use every bit of knowledge that they give rather than just follow that in a ritual sense. So yes, religion, like any other knowledge source, is rich in tradition, rich in history, rich in actually spirituality, if you can see it.
Yes.
So I hope that the book doesn't appear to be religious. It's not meant to be. But it does draw upon tradition.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. Reflection gives us an opportunity to look back on our journey. Can you articulate what made you follow some of the roads you traveled? And how did you decide which road to follow and which to avoid?
I think one of the magic of listening to yourself, listening to your inner voice, recognizing that it is telling the truth. And if you follow that voice, I think it takes you in the right direction.
Very difficult for people to
Well,
understand
yes.
that.
Well, okay, in a pragmatic sense, let's not talk about spirituality for a minute, but let's be pragmatic. Yeah. More often than not, when you see something really good, you have no doubts. Right? You just see it, it's what you want, you like it, love it, you accept it. Same thing happens when you see something amazing, when you experience something amazing, you have no doubt. It's when you're not sure whether it's good, or it may be this or maybe that, then you get into this quandary of trying to delay and not making up your mind the pros and cons. But if something is there, it's sure, then there is no hesitation. And everything that's happened in my life, which has been profound, is being done immediately. There has been no moment of reflection, no moment of doubt. Just been so. So I would say, listen to your instincts. Listen to your instincts. They will tell you if it's right or wrong. Don't listen to your mind all the time, because that's where the problem arises.
That's a very interesting. So where would you feel that your instincts tell you? What is it for you that?
Well, instinct is your essence, your body, your mind, your heart, your whole being tells you something. It's not something which just is the pros and cons, balancing this against this, or shall I do this? Yeah. Of course, these things only work when you are sincere to your purpose. If you're just looking for a business deal, then maybe that's not the best way to do it. But I think it is so. And it also becomes a habit in a way to try and listen, to be quiet, to reflect upon it, and the answer comes. I think there's a wonderful paragraph in the book about truth, which Joan Fountain describes in one of our circles, Craig. She says, truth, just you'll feel the essence of your truth. Every being in your body will tell you that's the truth. It's not about semantics. It's not about words. It's not about the mind. It is just something profound telling you that's the truth.
So maybe you could say a little more about these inner voices and the difference between an ego and calling.
Oh my goodness, Craig. I suppose the best way to describe it is the ego is like a pendulum. It's not when people say, "Oh, try and be humble," learn humility. But actually, this journey, this physical journey on earth, is a pull of this beautiful earthly life, this attraction, and the attraction of the beauty of your soul. By this earthly life, I could say this is the ego, if you like, the pursuit of your material life. And it's seductive. It's a beautiful life. It seduces you. And you forget about the real beauty, that the underlying peace and beauty that resides within you. And I think this is the battle that we fight in this life, the battle between the ego and the battle between your spiritual pull, if you like. That's why I say that even St. Francis was saying that he was not talking about religion. He was talking about lower self and higher self in the same way. It does not make it religious. It is really a beautiful story about a great monk, who gave up his ego, actually, I would say, subsumed himself in God and gave up his ego. This is a story about the ego. It's not a story about religion, nothing to do with religion. It's a story about unconditional love. These are the beautiful stories that come out of these type of so-called religious things, not meant to be some sort of prayer or anything. It's meant to be these beautiful stories. And that's what I've tried to concentrate on, to bring those beautiful stories as an example of these attributes of mankind, like love, like compassion, like letting go, like seclusion. These are all stories, but they go back to religious characters and so on, but they're not stories. They're not religion. They're stories.
Didn't think I was going to make it easy for you, did you?
I'd be disappointed if you did.
So some of the early chapters in the book are quite challenging titles. And I wondered if you can say some more about, without spoiling the read for people, about the chapters of trust, acceptance, and faith.
Well, trust, faith, and unity. What do you mean?
Well, then they are specific
faith.
chapters.
I would say that it's better to look at the subtitle than to look at the title, because in itself, looking at the title, action, it doesn't mean anything, if you see what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
But if you read it in conjunction with the subtitle, it begins to mean something. So, yes. For example, you look at openness, and then in Ephesus with beloved Mother Mary. It's not a story of, it's not religion. I'm not talking about religion. This is to being open to receiving inspiration and intuition, to receiving knowledge through intuition rather than through the mind. Opening up your heart to receive this love and compassion. This is what, and who more than Mother Mary to demonstrate to us her love and compassion for her son. So it's not, again, I repeat, nothing to do with religion, but it's a beautiful story. How much would have Mother Mary suffered to see her son being crucified? Not about religion. It's about compassion. It's about openness. Yeah. So I think, for example, unconditional love teaches us, for example, teaches about the story of the first Sufi saint. Again, not religion, but it's about her giving up, this lady of Fatima, al-Basri, she gave up her life in a different type of way for her love for God. She didn't want anything in return. She didn't say, I want to go to heaven. She didn't say, give me this and I love you. She demonstrated love, unconditional love for God. This just doesn't mean that we should express unconditional love for God. It also means we express unconditional love for our fellow human beings. Because love is not a transaction. Love is definitely not a transaction. If you expect something in return, you've lost the plot. Although we do all the time. So again, drawing upon these parables to demonstrate human values rather than religious values.
Okay. So I did ask a few of my colleagues if they wanted to add some questions, and the following few questions are something that changes the tack a little bit. How have the experiences described in your book changed your life, your attitudes, your daily practices, relationships with family, friends, and potentially others seeking learning?
Sometimes long questions deserve short answers. There's only one lesson to learn, if one can learn that, is that if you can, and for me in meditation, through meditation, and through gratitude, through appreciating what is given to you, accepting that, if you can express that in love and compassion inside out, rather than outside in, and I explained that very quickly. Outside in is that you can teach somebody to do one or two things differently. But when the love and compassion comes from inside out, then it is reflected in every action that you take. It's not directed to one thing. It's not directed to this person or that person or this thing or this event. It is expressed for everything you do. It becomes your language of love. I'm not saying I'm there, but I am saying that I would like to be there, because it's not about changing your life towards your friends or your family or it's about every deed, every action that you take has to be tainted, has to have within it the essence of love and compassion. So has it changed me? I think it's a very long process. I probably have to wait many more lifetimes, Craig. But certainly, these experiences have taken me a step or two further, I hope, in that direction. And even an inch, actually, would be a great achievement. So I think that, has it changed me? I don't know. Others will tell. But if I have even able to express my love and compassion through my actions and my behavior, even 1 single inch, 1 centimeter, I have progressed then, and I'm happy.
Well, I would probably ask you the question that if you were looking at yourself today as a 20-year-old young man, could you believe the path that you have walked upon?
Actually, to be honest with you, this is what I always desired.
Okay.
I didn't know what I desired exactly, if you see what I mean, because as a seeker, you don't know what you desire. That's the whole point. But I know that is the type of path I was looking for always. And so where I am is not a place I'm lost in. It's a place I was always looking to be in, and I am always grateful. I am thankful that that I have been blessed with these opportunities and these experiences.
So the image that I and you know me well enough to know that I get images in my mind. It's a sense of you standing on with one foot on two tectonic plates, that they're constantly rubbing and moving and separating and coming back together again, just as we live in two different worlds. We're living in the world of being with family and friends and making a living and putting a roof over our head, and that's of the essence of our journey. The real sense that that's been happening a lot for you through your life.
I think the Sufis say it this way, don't they? They say you have your feet on earth and your head in heaven, in a sense. In a way, one has to get that harmony between your body and your soul. And one of my own favorite chapters in the book is what is it? Chapter 11, which is harmony, in which my body and soul speak to each other. And what are they doing? They're trying to have one feet on earth and the head in heaven. So if we can achieve that, nobody needs to be a monk. Although if you can, that is fine too, because we are here for a physical experience, and so we must have that in the proper way. Yet you can also give due regard and harmony to your soul and what it needs for that journey, because it too has its own journey. As we have a physical journey, we have a spiritual journey. And if you can align those two, which they do align, then I think you know that you will experience what I call in the book infinite happiness. And you do feel that immense peace.
It's interesting that the figure of 8 is this infinity, this constant going round and around. And it's a little bit like life, and our soul moves one way and then it comes and crosses and it comes back again. And this is this continuous image that we create. And the moments of harmony are rare and wonderful. And then suddenly, little by little, it separates again, and the pull is there, and then we're pulling us back into that sort of experience.
I couldn't have described it better, because it's not possible to be in harmony all the time. For harmony to exist, there has to be disharmony too. So I think your figure of 8 is a beautiful way to put it. Thank you, Craig.
A question. Is your spiritual teacher, Ustad, still an important figure in your life? And can you share some insights for others to bear in mind about teachers and mentors?
I think without Ustad, I would not have been able to meet my teacher. You know, when the student's ready, the teacher appears, and he was the teacher that I needed. We had met in another lifetime. We'd started a journey. Now this is where things become difficult for people who read, but it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's true or not. And so, yes, it is important, but actually, I've been very, very fortunate. I really would say, not only is my great Ustad still here helping and teaching, I had the good fortune to meet an amazing monk in Burma. We spent now 11 years almost on and off together. He's a great man. He had a different way of teaching. He taught more about the pragmatic things of life, because Buddhism, in a sense, is much more pragmatic. You know, it says if you do good, only good will come out of it. It doesn't venture into the spiritual side. And why does it not venture? Not because it may not exist. It's because Buddhism wants to direct you to your worldly life. And because if you fulfill that, you will also fulfill a lot of the spiritual aspects. So he was a great teacher. And then, of course, meeting Joan from our sanctuary, my beloved friend, Joan, she was also an amazing teacher. So, it's not that it's just Ustad who's, of course, great, but, I've been given teachers in abundance and the very best, I would say.
Lovely. Maybe you could say a little bit more about Joan. And I'm changing my question a little bit because the question was put as who has been particularly influential in your search for enlightenment? And I think that's quite a challenging question. So I wondered whether Joan was privy to that or part of that for you.
So without saying who is good or bad, better or best or whatever.
I wasn't asking about that.
No, but you see the point about Joan, it's actually a very beautiful story of friendship and a beautiful story of soul friendship. I loved Joan and Joan loved me at a soul level. And it is again goes back to that story of how Rumi met his master Shams. But Shams' own journey was completed when his ideas, his thoughts, and his being were absorbed by Rumi. In other words, Shams gave up all his teachings to Rumi. And when his job was done, he left. And he left it to Rumi to carry on this journey. You see, I wondered, and I don't know if it's true or whatever, but I always thought that Joan had to give her messages through to complete her own journey.
Yes.
And I remember you and I talking about it, and you saying, Feroze, she said, I'll live to 100. But the truth is that she had to live until such time as her job was complete. Her job was complete because she confided in me in such a way that I was able to keep her messages through the book that she said, through the videos I made for her. And until the last moment, when we had our last interview, two weeks before she passed away, I knew that was going to be our last interview, that she had told me everything she wanted to tell me. Of course, there was a lot more in her to be able to share. However, that was my capacity.
Yes.
That is how much she could give me. And in a sense, her job was complete. I knew that she was going. In fact, the way she was describing afterlife in that interview, if you listen to it again, you will see, my goodness, she's already there. Her journey has started.
Yes.
And so I think it was a special relationship, a relationship where Joan had to complete her own journey, doing the things she had to do.
You know, the experience, and maybe we digress a little, but I will just for a moment. It's a privilege to be able to share the passing of someone. When it's our own family, it always becomes incredibly painful and difficult because of our emotional relationship. But when it's a friend, we're able to, especially one that has lived a life, we're able to see the departing, the message, the reflection, the whole experience of that. So it is a gift to have that. And someone who is imparting their wisdom to you in that way is a beautiful gift in its own way.
But there was an additional gift, which was for me, only for me. All that other stuff was for everybody.
Yes.
And that additional gift was that 2 weeks after that, my own father passed away. And that made it so much easier for me.
Right.
So it was a beautiful relationship and a beautiful end.
Lovely. I think that I've asked a lot of questions today, and I really would like to give you an opportunity for you to wrap this up in a way of what you would like to say. And then if it's okay, I will just bring a close to
So actually, I will not. I don't want to say anything except I want to do a short meditation with you, if I may, and to all of us listening to this. It's I would call it a universal meditation rather than anything particular. So, my friend Craig, can I ask you to relax and take a deep breath? Deep breath. Just bring your attention to the tip of your nostrils and just feel the sensation of your breath at the tip of your nostrils coming in, going out. Now I want you to bring the attention of your breath to your heart. Feel as though you're breathing into your heart and breathing out of your heart. You feel it straight into your heart, straight outside your heart. If your mind is covered with some thoughts, allow them to just drift away like the clouds in the sky. Feel as though you're breathing directly into your heart. As your heart in and out. Silently express your deep gratitude for the unique privilege of experiencing this earthly life as a human being. It is a great privilege that we're given this earthly life, that we're given this free will to express the way we live. And as you express your gratitude, allow your body to feel the love and compassion that arises within you naturally with this gratitude. You're filled with love and compassion for everything. Now I want you to think of an affirmation. I accept with humility whatever comes my way. I surrender to each and every experience that is given to me. Why? Because we are given what we need, not what we want. So we must accept, surrender, because with acceptance comes action, and from action comes outcome. Craig, when you're ready, come back to the room, my friend. Open your eyes.
What a beautiful way of closing and finishing and sharing the essence of your book and the essence of yourself. And can I just finish, Feroze, by really pointing out the beautiful gift that you have given to the sanctuary of donating the proceeds of the book and your intention of the book to the sanctuary. And I truly believe that this book is an inspiration to people and will help those that are seeking their path to understand that level of simple humility and trust. So on behalf of all of those at the sanctuary, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Craig.